Hello everyone, welcome to Formula Story. In this video, I'll be discussing a really effective approach which will help you all to crack the IIFT exam. So let's begin. So before looking at the strategy to crack the paper, let's understand the paper first. In IIFT 2016, there were 6 subsections which were there: reading comprehension, verbal ability, data interpretation, logical reasoning, quant and GK. Now RC and VA were clubbed as one section, DI and LR were clubbed as another section, quant and GK were 2 single sections. In reading comprehension, there were 16 questions and there were 4 passages having 4 questions each, out of which I would say 2 passages were really easy, one was of medium level and one was medium to difficult. Now the marks per question was 1 mark per RC question, and the marks deducted if you get a question wrong is 1/3 of 1, which is 0.33. Now for verbal ability sections, there were a total of 20 questions and 0.7 marks were awarded for 1 right question and 0.25 deducted for 1 wrong question. Data interpretation had 20 questions, 1 mark per question and 0.33 deducted for 1 wrong question. And logical reasoning had 22 questions, 0.75 marks per question and 0.25 marks were deducted if you got a question wrong. And quant had 20 questions, 1 mark per question, 0.33 marks deducted if you got 1 question wrong. And GK had 25 questions, out of which there was 0.5 mark per question and 0.167 marks were deducted if you got a question wrong. Now let's look at the expected cutoff that each and every section can have. The RC and the VA section will roughly have a cutoff of 8 marks. DI LR section will roughly have a cutoff of 8 marks. Quant will have a cutoff of 7 marks and GK will have a cutoff of 2 to 3 marks. This is assuming that the paper is going to be slightly easy. If it turns out to be difficult, obviously the cutoff is going to decrease a bit. Now let us look at the distribution of time. Since there is going to be 120 minutes in which you will have to attempt say about 120 to 125 questions. So let's distribute the time accordingly so that we can achieve our sectional cutoff as well as maximize our score. Now IIFT does not have a standard format. So rather than looking at it as a 4-section paper of VARC, DILR, Quant and GK, let's look at it as a 6 subsection paper, and the order in which we're going to attempt the paper is as stated. The first section that you'll be attempting will be GK in about 7 minutes, and you should get about 6 to 7 questions correct. The purpose of attempting this section is just to clear the sectional cutoff and not to maximize the score. So just score about 3 marks and get away with this section. The next section we'll attempt is verbal ability in about 15 minutes. Verbal ability is going to have questions based on vocabulary, synonyms, antonyms, fill in the blanks, parajumbles, etc. So in about 15 minutes, we can easily attempt 12 to 15 questions, which will give us a good score in this particular subsection. Now the next would be reading comprehension, and as I said, it will have 4 RC passages of 4 questions each. So our attempt is to attempt 3 RC passages, that is 12 questions, in about 20 minutes. And say get about 10 correct, because the RCs aren't as difficult as say CAT or ZAT. They're going to be direct questions, like the author is going to ask you that why is Rohan not being allowed by his teacher to come to school, and the answer will be directly stated in the passage. It's like solving a 10th standard English comprehension paper. Yeah. Now the data interpretation question, this is going to test how well you can calculate stuff. It's going to be a really calculation intensive question. So our attempt is to solve about 10 questions in the 20 minutes mark and get away with it. In the next 20 minutes, we'll be solving logical reasoning and say solve about 10 to 12 questions. Now logical reasoning will have about 3 caselets which are puzzles, and the remaining questions are going to be singletons based on number series, input, output, verbal reasoning, etc. Now the last section that we'll attempt will be quant. This section will be attempting in about 20 minutes and say we'll attempt about 10 to 12 questions. Now quant will majorly be dominated by algebra and arithmetic, and the remaining section of the paper will cover questions based on modern maths and geometry. Now why do I suggest this order? It's because GK, you need to get done with it as soon as possible, because I know that I'll know a limited set of questions and after that I can't solve much. So let's just solve it in the beginning, clear our cutoff, and then get done with this section. Now the next 2 sections, verbal and reading comprehension, is what I suggest next, because if you solve it say in the end, it might become a bit boring and you won't be able to read those long RC passages. So it's better to attempt them in the beginning and then get away with these two sections. The next section will be DI and LR, because DI is a bit calculation intensive, so let's say we can do it a bit later on. Similarly for logical reasoning, some people find it interesting, and quant is most of the people's favorite. So that's what I suggest, that you solve quant in the end. Especially for me, I can solve quant even when I'm like tired or maybe I'm not feeling like doing anything. So quant will solve in the end. So if you follow this strategy of distribution of time and attempting these many questions, you will be able to solve about 65 questions in say about 100 minutes. And this 65 questions that you solve, they are going to be the easiest questions of the lot. Okay. So this way, if you follow this strategy, you'll be able to clear the cutoff for each and every section by the end of 100 minutes itself. And say you can score a total of about 40 to 45 marks by the time you reach the 100-minute mark. Now in the remaining 20 minutes, what you should do is solve the questions that you found a tad bit time consuming, or the questions which you felt like you can do it, but I'm not pretty much sure about the approach. So these 20 minutes shall be spent in solving those questions. Say what you can do is you can circle the questions while you're attempting. As we know that IIFT is going to be a paper-based test. So while you're going through each and every section within this stipulated time, just keep on marking questions that you feel that you can do, but are going to be a bit time consuming. So in this 20 minutes time, which is left, you can attempt about 10 to 12 questions and get about 8 correct. So this way, if you follow this strategy perfectly, then you'll be able to attempt at least 75 questions. And if you say maintain an accuracy of 85%, you'll be easily able to clear the cutoff. The cutoff is generally around 45 to 48 marks, but let's assume it's going to be 50 marks. And if we attempt 75 questions with 85% accuracy, then 50 marks is going to be really easy to crack. And what I would suggest is, as soon as you're done with say a set of 5 questions in a particular section, circle the questions on the OMR sheets then and there. It's no point keeping the questions for the end. I've seen a few people who have kept like, I'll mark all the questions at the end and say about in 10 minutes I'll do that. But what happens when the 10 minutes are left, you'll start shivering. You won't be able to mark all the questions properly, and it might happen that you might reach like might mark about 60 questions and you have more 17 questions to mark, and the examiner will just come and take away your paper. So it's a good idea to solve say about 5 questions, mark the question on the OMR sheet, then move to the set of next 5 questions. So this will help you to avoid any kind of hassle. Now another question that might come is, how do you select those 65 questions in the first 100 odd minutes? Now for this, let's go section by section. The first section that we are attempting will be GK. As I said previously, your target is just to attempt about 6 to 7 questions and get those 3 marks and get out of this section. I repeat, do not randomly mark these questions based on your gut feeling, instincts whatsoever, because you're going to invite negatives then, and it might get a bit difficult to clear this cutoff. And you don't want to enter into a situation where you can't clear the IIFT exam just because you didn't clear the GK cutoff. In VA, do not make random guesses based on your instincts. Just mark stuff that you're sure of. Mark the meaning of the words that you're sure of. Do not, mark the meaning of the words just because you feel that this can be the answer. So you have to maintain that good amount of accuracy so that you're able to clear the cutoff. Now in RC, look at the questions first. See if most of the questions based on a passage are direct in nature. Like, why did the author say this? What is his opinion about this? Something of that sort. You shouldn't attempt passages which have got questions like what can be inferred or which of the following cannot be true. Because in such questions you'll have to go option by option, then use your reasoning skills, and it might take a bit of time. So it's better to attempt those questions which are direct in nature, and while you're reading the passage itself, by the time you're done reading the whole passage, you'll be done marking the answers as well. Now coming to the next section, which is going to be our DI. One second. Yeah. Coming to the DI section, what you have to do is have a look at the options first before even looking at the set. Now if the options appear to be pretty spaced out, like the options are like 40,000, 55,000, 85,000, 1 lakh rupees, then you can definitely solve that set, because you won't have to even if you approximate the questions a bit, it won't hamper your chances of getting the question correct. So look at the options first and then decide if you'll be attempting that DI set or not. It won't be something challenging, it'll just test your calculation skills, how good you can approximate and play with numbers. Now in the LR section, solve the questions only if you're familiar with it. Look at a number series question. see if you know what the logic behind it is. If say in about 20 seconds you can crack the logic, well and good. If not, then leave it. Similarly for puzzles also, if you think that it is a distribution matrix based puzzle which you can solve, or it is something based on blood relation that you can solve, go for it. If you think that this I've never done in my life, then don't go for those sets. Okay, it's not a place to do trial and error. Since we have a limited time of 120 minutes, we are only going to solve the sets of questions that we are sure of. Now coming to QA, what I would suggest is read each and every question in about 15 seconds. After reading the question, if the approach is crystal clear in your head, then solve it then and there. Suppose I read an arithmetic question, it's based on profit and loss. It's given me that some thing is working out, the manufacturer gets some products, he buys it at this point, this amount, sells it at this amount. All I have to do is calculate the profit. Okay, that's an easy question, I can solve it, do it then and there. But if the approach is a bit hazy, say in modern maths, in permutation and combinations, or say in geometry, or if you think there is going to be enlisting of cases that will be required, so it's going to get a bit time consuming, then what you can do is keep those questions for the last 20 minutes, as I've said. And if after reading the questions in the first 15 seconds, nothing strikes, then don't think about it, just leave that question and move to the next question. So if you follow this approach for each and every section, you'll be able to pick up those easiest section out of each and every subsection and hence maximize your score. So finally, what I would suggest is just follow this approach as I have stated for each and every section. Then for each section, spend the stipulated amount of time. You can take the screenshot if you want to, and say in about 100 minutes, as I said, you'll be able to solve 65 questions. In the remaining 20 minutes, you can solve more 10 to 12 questions, and hence will be able to clear the cutoff. And finally, just be calm and composed throughout the paper. Don't freak out if you can't do a particular question. It's a good idea to leave it if you are in doubt. So that's it, people. I will be coming up with more interesting videos. Till then, do like my video and subscribe to my channel, and also post your valuable feedback so that I can improve at my upcoming videos. Thank you.